Hey everyone, and welcome back. So today I'm doing a video on kind of a hybrid topic, right? So not that long ago, I got a piece of equipment to do some work around my house. And that's kind of a topic for a different video somewhere else. But the problem is when you buy something at an auction, you always have to make sure and check over what you're buying. Thankfully, when I did this online auction, I lucked out and the equipment ran perfectly fine and was brand new. However, there were two almost identical units, and I bid on the one with a busted headlight. Now, lucky for me, I have the skill set necessary to make a replacement. So I just threw together a quick video of me designing it, printing it, and putting it on the unit. As I normally do, I'm going to put this up on Maker World, and you guys can print it as you need. I use PETG because it needs to be at least somewhat weather resistant, and it's not going to be inside the interior of the cab. So the odds of it getting hot and melting are pretty low up here, up north. However, if you are in the Southwest or somewhere really hot, it might be beneficial to use ASA or ABS. That's kind of your call. I wouldn't use PLA unless you're maybe somewhere like, I don't know, Alaska or something, and you're not really worried about it getting bumped into. I think there's just not enough rigidity there. I would definitely use a different material though. So I try to make this design very close to the other light on here so that they matched almost perfectly, because I didn't really want to replace both just to make them match. There are some small, slight differences, and I might change those in the future. But in the meantime, I'd say it's like a 90% match. There's a few fillets and stuff that are different from some sweeps and stuff that you wouldn't really see unless you put them next to each other. And that's just because I had to measure it all off because I don't have a CAD drawing to work with. I don't know why I decided to do this in the dark. It would have been a lot easier to do this in the daylight, but I guess it will make it a little easier to show off at the end how good it looks. Now, those looking to print this, or if you guys reach out, I might even print to order if it's something you guys are into. This is for a mini excavator from AGT. It's a 1-ton unit. I think it's a QK18 RXS-C. It really is a pretty small little machine. And these lights are pretty simple. They don't even have a gasket around them, which I think is a mistake. That may be something I change in the future. But it's really just so you have something you can, so you can see a little bit as you're working in the dark and trying to dig. So something you'll notice in my design, though, is I did cut a slot all the way through instead of actually like just letting you, instead of having just a hole at the back, because the way that this wire is ran, it doesn't seem like there's any disconnect point that's actually accessible from outside. There is a panel on the inside you can take off, but at the time I didn't really want to dig any deeper in my machine. I was trying to get some hours on it before I start experimenting and modifying it too much. And so I kind of didn't even bother with trying to disconnect the wire. I didn't even want to cut the wires and have to modify them. So instead I made a slot in my design so you can just slide the wire into position. So this should make retrofitting a little bit easier, even if it does give up a little bit on the rigidity of when you tighten that screw. I'm planning on probably creating a spacer at some point, but honestly, so far, I've installed this a couple weeks back, I think, is when I made this change, and I've been able to use it day and night with no issues with it moving. So one issue with keeping with the original design as tightly as I did is that it's not very easy to print. There's a little bit of what would you call that? Like an outcropping or a bit that kind of hangs off the front that kind of caresses the underside of the plastic. To me, I originally was under the impression it was the top because that would make sense to kind of glance off some water. But it's actually on the bottom side, which kind of defeats the purpose in my mind, and it almost traps water. But anyway, that makes the front not so flat. So you can't just put it on its face and print with some supports that way. And the back has these pseudo heat sink kind of diagonal raised sections. They almost look like fins for heat sinking. It's plastic, so I don't think it's truly for heat sinking. It's probably more for rigidity and to give it a look, like a more rugged look. So I mirrored that as much as I could. The problem is that also means the back is not very suitable for printing. And I didn't want to set it on, I think there's only really one edge because the other edge has your mounting point. So there's really only one side that's kind of somewhat flat, and it's not a good candidate because that also creates a shear point because the layers would fall in line with the bolt hole that lets you adjust this. So I just gave up and printed it on its back with some supports, and it came out pretty okay. There are lines in the supports where the supports made contact, but that's really been inside between the fins. And PETG is already shiny, so it already shows kind of the imperfections a little bit. So when you step away from it, it kind of hides it enough that it's not a big deal. But I would like to find a more opportune way of printing it. But at the moment, I'm content enough. It did take some time, but I was able to print it on my P1S without really any issues. And if your printer's a little bit slower, if you're running an old Ender or something, it will take a little while. But if you have one of these machines and you're without your lights, or they're just dangling off like this, it's probably worth the time put into it, right? Anyway, I really just wanted to share this. I also wanted to point out that I am going to be doing some yard work with this piece of equipment in some other videos on a different channel, just because unlike my other sections of stuff where it's all tech related and programming or 3D printing or VR, this is kind of a whole different segment. I'm going to be putting up parts of my fence. I'm going to be digging out some lots and things like that, as well as doing some repair and some reviews on the machine and talking about the auction process. So I'm putting that on a different channel entirely. I'll put a link in the description. It's currently called Backyard Blueprints. And if that's your interest, if that fits your interest at all, go ahead, go over there, subscribe, or watch some of those videos. I'd really appreciate it. But at the same time, I also appreciate everyone who watches my BC Labs content, and I'm still going to be putting out content over here. I'm just juggling some projects around the house and the yard, so I decided I might as well make some content out of it for those who are interested. But I figure this is a good video to show the intersection of the two, and I really just appreciate you guys tuning in. Well, now, so I have it all set up and the lights are turned on, you can see that it still looks great. These are very bright lights, and they are staying in place, which is the most important part about all of this. Although I showed it off in the dark, I probably should do a better job of showing it off in the daytime. Don't know if you can, it's a bad angle for me to get in at. That's the one I made. And this side is the stock one. I cannot tell if I'm focusing properly. Yeah. And the one down here is dirty, but anyway, it's still fine. See, that one's right side up. This is on top, which makes sense because you're trying to block out some rain. That's what I was saying, is it feels like it's upside down on the other ones. Maybe I'll redo my design to match this one. Anyway, just wanted to show this thing off in the daylight, kind of so you can see what I was actually getting towards working on. I think it turned out pretty okay. Thank you guys for watching.